Immunity is a topic that often comes up and is greatly misunderstood. So let me explain. There are different kinds of immunity. There is use immunity and there's transactional immunity. Use immunity is what you get usually if you have a federal case and you've entered into a proffer agreement or a queen for a day. That letter will say that your testimony cannot be used against you if you were to go to trial. It can't be used by the government in their case in chief, meaning when they put on their case and they introduce evidence, as part of that evidence, they can't say, well, so-and-so, didn't you meet with us? Or, I'm sorry, so-and-so met with us on such and such a date, and he said that he did it. That can't happen. However, there are a lot of exceptions in that letter, which say that that testimony that you give during that proffer meeting can be used to impeach you if you say something different at a later date, or even if your lawyer argues something different at a later date, i.e. trial. It can be used to pursue leads. So the example that they like to give is that if you tell them that you buried a body over at Joe's house, they can't use your statement against you, but they can go to Joe's house and dig up the body, and they can then find your DNA on the body and use that against you. So that is use immunity. Transactional immunity means you are not going to be charged. This almost never happens. So a lot of people have the misconception that if they cooperate with the government, they give them all the information that they have about their case and other people who are engaged in criminal conduct, that the U.S. Attorney's Office is not going to charge them. That just doesn't happen in the real world. It didn't happen to the president's men. It just doesn't happen. So what can you expect? You can sometimes expect a gentleman's agreement where there is no handshake, there is nothing in writing, but the government might say to you, well, if you cooperate with you, we won't go after your family member. So they do kind of use it as a tactic to get you to cooperate, but there will never be any promises made. If you cooperate, we're not going to charge your wife. If you cooperate, we're not going to charge your best friend. If you cooperate, we're not going to charge you. It just doesn't happen. And I'll explain the reason that it doesn't happen. Because if you end up testifying at trial, you get on the stand and you're testifying about what so-and-so did. The defense attorney for so-and-so gets up and says, well, you had this agreement with the government. You were looking at 10 years, but since you cooperated, they decided not to charge you, or they agreed not to charge your wife or your best friend. And you say, yes, that makes you not a credible witness. The defense attorney for so-and-so then says to you, well, you would say anything to prevent yourself from going to prison, or you would say anything to reduce your prison sentence, or you would say anything to keep your wife or your best friend out of prison, right? And of course, you can't wiggle out of that. So the only thing that you can say is that no promises have been made. The only thing I was told was that I have to be completely truthful. And that is the key element of any cooperation, is complete truthfulness. So if you minimize your conduct, if you hold back information, if you omit information, you think, well, if they don't ask the question, I don't have to tell them. If they find out at some point that you were not completely truthful with them, then you may not get any credit for your cooperation. And then all bets are off. They can use your testimony or statements against you, and you've given them basically the keys to the mansion. So immunity is a tricky thing, and everybody wants immunity. Of course they do, and they think, well, I have information, and if I give it to them, then I won't get charged. And unfortunately, that's just not reality. Your family members may not be charged anyway, but that isn't because they agreed to an immunity deal for those people. What it is generally, as I said, kind of a way to get you to cooperate. And they say, look, if you don't come in and talk to us, then we're going to start investigating, and maybe something's going to come up about your wife or your best friend that we can use against them. So it really behooves you to come in earlier so that you can get the best outcome and so that we don't look at them. Again, it's not an agreement not to charge them, and it is not immunity. So use immunity is something that you do get. Transactional immunity is something that does not happen in 99.9% of cases.